there's always a place where I want to grow, and I can't grow if somebody's just accepting me for where I'm at. There's always somewhere else that there's always room for growth. And if I ever just left you, like in some of those moments, if I ever just left you there and, oh, yay, Courtney, you've made it past this moment, and not challenged you for something different, where would you be today?
If you are looking to move forward in your life towards your authentic dreams without sacrificing your emotional health, your nervous system, your relationships, or your spiritual health, well, you are in good company. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is a safe space for creatives. This is the Heal Create podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. I am Courtney, and I have literally one of my favorite people in the entire world here with me. Oh my gosh, I just had this surge of joy. Today I have somebody that basically helped raise me, and she's been in my life for a really long time. She has been a mentor to me. She is absolutely, I think I call her mom. I do call her mom. And I have for a long time. And I thought it would be really cool to just share this person with you guys and kind of talk about my journey of being mentored before I professionally mentored. And I would love to introduce you all to my beloved Nannette. Hi, Nannette.
Hi, Courtney. And
Thanks for
and
being
you, I know, and I feel the same way about you. Like, you're my girl. Yep, you're
here.
my girl, and just watching you blossom into who you are is one of the greatest gifts.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
it's like having you're like one of my kids. So watching you grow into who you are is just an absolute gift.
Thank you. Well, I I'm like, do I need a minute? Thank you. Thank you so much. And uh yeah, I I don't even know where to start except to say that you have the you know where I've been. And so that's why when you've watched me become who I am, it's because you knew me at the absolute lowest points in my whole life. And I think that I'd love for you to tell people like a little bit about who you are. And then I just thought it would be cool to kind of talk about the ways that you supported me during my lowest times and where you were, like how you even became the type of person that you were, which is somebody that is absolutely grounded in like unwavering radical grace. So yeah, start from there.
So, okay, so Courtney and I met at church. She was a worship leader, and we were attracted to each other like at first sight. And 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 it was an endearing time for us. And she actually is the one that said, "Hey, do you think that you could mentor me?" And I
I'm
was,
sure that I did.
you did. And I'm like, sure. And then it just evolved from loving you from where you were, getting to know you, but then having the transparency that we had back and forth really is what built the foundation of who we are, where we've been, and even to where we are today. So um, I did not always grow up in I knew the Lord. I grew up Catholic. I had a very religious background. And then as I grew older, made some mistakes. I am a divorced mom who then remarried with two
Mm,
additional children. So we have a joint group
beautiful
or
family.
there's six of the children that we have, and we didn't raise two of them together, but we raised the four of them together, and just manipulating through all of those um, lovely pieces of life.
Mm-hmm.
I had a time with God where I can tell you I have radical grace because of the radical love he has for me. And it
Mm-hmm.
was one experience at church where the pastor was talking about forgiveness, and I was dead set that I knew how to forgive people. And the Lord called me up to the altar. I could feel it in my body. So I went up to the altar, I got prayed
Mm,
over, And that pastor, I have no idea what he really said, but what I know I heard was, you know how to forgive other people, but you've never forgiven yourself.
Mm,
And the
oh,
more I
wow.
hold on to my own sins, the
Wow.
less likely I will be able to be used for you. And so I
Mm,
decided that day that he has forgiven me and I'm no greater than him. And so
mhm.
since he is God and I am not, I took that moment with him and I've projected my entire life based on that one conversation with God. And
Wow.
you would also say that is how I have loved
Mhm.
you through everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was him changing my identity, that I'm loved by him and I don't have to try to be loved.
Yeah.
That he has chosen and picked me and he adores me. And if I could only hold on to that one piece, everything else can be worked out.
Yes, which you do. You were probably the first person that I ever saw fully embody that, like no strings attached, Grace. And I wouldn't have known when I met you what I was about to head into, right? And I
Right?
I didn't I wasn't like, "I'm in trouble, can you mentor me?" I was like, "I'm pretty much fixed and healed already, but you're so
For sure.
cool, will you?" And then
Yeah.
I just completely, oh my gosh, who I was at the end of my 20s was just I we're not embarrassed of her, but I was just the before my life really started. And so I wanna talk about that, but I'm also wondering like so you said you grew up and you knew God, and you actually just told me before this call that you had a grandma that was the person that you could tell all your secrets to.
I
And
did. When we talked about it today, I was like, "Oh yeah, that is that person." I
yeah,
we had a very tight Italian family and we were, always together, lived around the corner from each other. But my grandmother was the gatherer. She always had food at her house. She always had something, like we gathered there, which is something that I do today. And as you think about like
yeah,
what you were taught is what you do.
yeah,
That also rolled over to my mom being a gatherer, always people around. But my grandmother, I have made some pretty poor choices as a teenager. I never did drugs or alcohol, but I made a really a horrible decision as a teenager around 17, and
yeah.
I needed to confess that to somebody.
Oh,
And
yeah,
she was the person I confessed it to,
yeah,
and she was without judgment. She just loved me through it. Of course, she talked to me about the consequences, um, because I don't want to mislead the fact that I am 100% believe in radical grace, but I also know there's consequences from
for
decisions
sure.
we make.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but
That's
I
just
have,
life.
yeah, and I just look at her as an example, and that's who I am, but that's also who I am as a grandma. Like my
Yeah,
grandkids just, yeah, they trust me.
yeah. God, I well, and I feel like did you always know? Because somebody just asked me this recently, and they were like, "When did you know that you wanted to be, like, a life consultant, a life coach?" And I was like, "If I'm really honest with myself, I remember bossing people around in kindergarten. I remember genuinely growing up as a kid and being like, I know what you should do with your life, with your day, with this problem." Like, I was, like, unsolicited advice all the time. I was just such a know-it-all. And I think, like, I've always just known that I wanted to lead people and help people, and then obviously I fell apart myself and needed so much help. But, like, did you feel that same way? Because you're like the, what's that? Like a moth to a flame. You're like the flame and we're the moths. I feel like you are never not like helping somebody or somebody's through hard times. Literally never. And it's like that is who you are. Did you always know that you were that person?
Um, I would tell you that I've always been, growing up, the person that was the reasonable one and had to help people. Yes. I always had to
Mm-hmm.
draw, like, if you asked me years ago, as a little girl, I wanted to be a teacher, but
Yeah, same.
back before I went to college, I wanted to be a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
But then life did not take me that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I always, during my journey with God, learning about my purpose, there was one time when I was in utter chaos, and and I felt like, okay, if I want to do something for God, I've got to learn something about me, one gift that He's given me. And so when I learned my most powerful gift, I was challenged to use it every day. So the reason why you may see me in the aspect of wanting to help somebody is because I believe I'm an encourager. That's the
Yeah, for
gift God
sure.
gave me. So
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking for an opportunity to encourage somebody.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like she sounds so sweet and she is so sweet, but also she I feel like nobody will tell you with fury your identity harder than Nannette. And that's like something that I there's just so many things that like I the most influential people in my life, of which you are, one of the easily one of the top 5 that I like you imprinted onto me. The way that I mentor and the way that I, help people. And one of them is like not being afraid to like call out what I see. And like I'm uncompromising on the true self that I see in other people. And then going on through all of my training, learning that like this is like settled science. Everybody has an authentic self. The Bible calls it your spirit seated in heavenly places, but like science calls it the seat of the self, where you're calm, curious, creative, compassionate, courageous, like your true authentic self. But I never would have the first person that ever truly like said, no, this is who you are, no matter how you act, was you. And that's something that I feel like that is who you are.
When I journaled about us today, and that was one of the pieces that
Hmm.
God reminded me, like, I never saw you for what you were walking in. I always saw you as the gift God gave us. And so
Mhm.
over and over the times that we've experienced, even like when Rod died, we had somebody that died, and
Mhm.
Courtney was the worship leader, and she had to help my 5-year-old daughter sing this song that she wanted to sing.
Mhm.
And just reminding both of you in that moment that you didn't think you could sing that song, that God equipped you for that moment. You
Yeah.
could cry later and act like it and cry later, be a crybaby later, but right now you're strong. God has made you that way. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, that's
And
like a yeah, go ahead.
it's really hard to have hard conversations, but but I have always seen the benefit of having that hard conversation because it leads to so much more growth. But I
Yeah.
also would say that our hard conversations were always rooted in one direction. And that direction
Mhm.
was always pointing you towards Jesus. So if there was a
Mhm.
if there was a correction or whatever we want to call it, a hard conversation, it was always rooted to direct you to Jesus and then
Mhm.
also lined up with biblical principles and not just what we thought.
Yeah. Well, and you were always really good. So you're talking about, so me and Becca, your daughter, we were singing at this funeral and it was so sad. It was a sudden death. It was so sad. What song did we sing? Do you remember?
Um, yes, by it'll come to me. It
I can't remember what it was, but I remember we were like, we're so sad and we can't do it. And you were like, listen to me. You are not a crybaby. And you were like, you can do this. I know who you are. You can do this. And we need you to do this. And I remember like that's another thing too, that I think sometimes in supporting roles, we can be so tender and sensitive that we're not calling people into their strength. And it's something, especially lately, that I have noticed there's a deficit for. And there was in my life too. And if there's too much not nurture, but what's the word? Like you can really almost get stuck in like that place of needing so much comfort that you forget that you're actually like an incredibly strong and courageous person that can do hard things. And I feel like you
yeah,
were always really good at like the balance of knowing when somebody needed comfort and when somebody needed to be like called into their own strength. Obviously that was like a little example that was funny, but it was a really great analogy for how I feel like you lead people.
right. Yes, because I believe like we all have made so many. Look, I am not perfect, and I've made so many mistakes in my life. But then when I come along and I watch why I had growth, and it was out of the compassion. that either others showed
Yes.
me or I felt
Yeah.
from God. But then also never left me in that place of compassion. There's always a place where I want to grow, and I
Yeah.
can't grow if somebody's just accepting me for where I'm at. There's
Yeah.
always somewhere else that there's always room for growth.
Yes.
And
Totally.
and if I ever just left you, like in some of those moments, if I ever just left you there and oh yay, Courtney, you've made it past this moment, and not challenged you for something different, where would you be today?
Oh my gosh. Oh, you always, always, you'd be like, I will never hang up the phone with you without giving you homework. And it was like the first time I actually ever wrote a letter to myself, which is just so crazy because I literally do this all day, every day. But the first time I ever wrote a letter to myself, um, was because you told me to. You're like, okay, first I want you to tell God all the things you're sad about and all the things you're mad about. And then I want you to have God write you back. And I remember being like, what? This was before I went to Bethel where everybody's weird and charismatic. But I
Right.
was like, it was so beautiful. And what I love about it is I talked to you about this today, but like so many people are hungry for spiritual moms and dads. And I'm like, that's really beautiful. But at the end of the day, like your spiritual mom and dad can be found in God. And you get these bonus family members. Like you are totally a bonus family
Yeah.
member, but you were never like, you were always like teaching me how to find that in God while you never went anywhere either, which is magical and
One
special.
thing that I thought about us, which I thought was really interesting as I was journaling about us today, but
Yeah.
it was always a two-way street though. Like, and I think that with my own kids, our lives are intertwined for a reason. And I
Hmm.
just didn't make it about me to you. I gave my ear to you as well. And so I
Hmm.
would be transparent with you. There's things that I've shared with you that you've been able to
Hmm.
balance off of me when you were healthy enough to handle it, or
Yeah.
even
Right.
in the small,
Like
or
later.
even if it
Hmm.
was small pieces. I would share my children and obstacles maybe weren't about what you were going through, but I also let you
Yeah.
know what I was going through in small pieces. um,
Yeah.
and walked you through my challenges, but then how I overcame them.
Yes.
And so I was transparent with you enough in
Yeah.
my in that time where we were able to share together and not just me being
Yeah.
your mentor. I let you be my daughter. And as
Mhm.
I have a daughter and she's 20 and we have a relationship that's super strong, but it's a dual relationship.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
just the mom. I'm also her advocate, and I'm here to help and guide and direct her.
Yeah.
But I'm yeah. So
Well, and that's how I think we built trust because that is what family is. And I would say at the same time, you have always been, I would say in our relationship, always, always like I know exactly what you're talking about. And I feel so like probably like with my own parents. Like I feel so honored when you're like sharing, like, yeah, this is what I'm going through right now. I'm like, I'm ready for this. Tell me I can handle but you're always like the mom. At the end of the day, you're like you are you I know how secure you are in God. And I know that you're sharing that stuff for me to build with me, like to build trust and because I am in a healthier place now, but also like I feel like I know how much you trust God. And so I don't feel the burden of that like in a way that's like
like I'm
doesn't.
bearing my whole heart
Yeah,
out to you.
no,
You need to
never
help me.
ever.
No, no, no.
No, it's like it's like one of the most beautiful and healthy relationships I truly, truly have ever experienced in my life. And I really mean that. And and the reciprocal nature of it is part of what makes it special. But it's like done in such a healthy way. And you've modeled it for me. I think in ways that you probably don't even, you weren't like consciously like, this is what I'm going to do. It's just like who you were. So that being said, I thought I would share a little bit more about a season of my life that I went through. We talked about this ahead of time. It was like, okay, we're not going to share details, but we're going to share some crazy things. Well, at least how I felt. And this was like right after I had, actually, even backing up, there was a season when I couldn't get pregnant. And
Mm,
all of my friends were getting pregnant. This is probably what bonded us
the
like
most.
immediately. Yeah, was because I it took us like a little more than a year to get pregnant, which now I in hindsight I'm like, yeah, it's wasn't I don't want to say it wasn't that big of a deal. It was painful because every month for 12th
Everyone
or
around
13th.
and
Yes,
everyone around
everyone
her
was
is like,
pregnant.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But now there's like so many other things that happen that I forget that even happened. But he was born and then I wasn't getting pregnant and then I remember you were like, "Oh no, this is happening for you." And you were like, "Did you know the first miracle in the Bible was somebody getting pregnant? Like this is happening and I'm here and we're going to pray for this." And then I did of course get pregnant. And
Yeah.
then Jack went through so many complications right when he was born and you were like, "Oh no, honey, we already know how this story ends. Like he's here. We knew what was going to happen. We're not afraid. We're and I just remember like white knuckling your faith like I was going to suffocate if I didn't have it. And that was really like what I was like, okay, like she's my person. And then
Yeah.
you remember that?
He's my miracle baby.
Yeah. Yes,
He
I know.
is.
It's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
I always forget that was so long ago, but it's true.
I know. Every time I see him, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
And it was Sarah's womb that was opened, and that was
Yeah.
the
Right.
first healing in the Bible.
Right.
And Rich had just told me that the day before. So it was just like how God had
Oh, that's
weeded
right.
everything together. Yeah. And now
Yeah.
look at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yes. And he was born and I just yeah. And he went through all of those things and I felt like what you told me about that afterwards was like that was like one of the first times or maybe you can correct me, but you were like you really stepped out in faith to be like this is
I
happening.
knew, yeah, it was
Yeah.
probably one of the first times that I had one interaction with God about healing and correcting me on my belief system, and then this happened, and I
Mm,
knew what I
it was a
knew, and
test.
I
Yeah.
believed what He said, and I had such an impression that you would be pregnant and that baby would be
Yeah.
fine, and so even
And
so, nothing swayed
yeah.
me.
You could have been like, "Well, you know what? We'll see.
I
It's God's
sure, yeah,
plan, and yeah, we'll
maybe
just pray for it." But you were
tomorrow.
like, "This is happening." I was like, "Okay." And yeah, that made such a huge impression on me. But fast forward
And
to
I am radical and I am a little crazy, but I'm not like that crazy, guys. I'm normal.
you're a little crazy, but it's why your life is so amazing. So, a few years later, after I had Asher, I went to the hospital, started having panic attacks. This is a story that I've told listeners that they know. And what I haven't shared, which I still am going to be really private with the details, but what I haven't shared was that about a year after that, I went off the rails a little bit. And there were a few things that were happening at the time in my marriage, in our, personal lives and in my heart. And I can see very clearly now that I never actually got the full healing that I needed, mentally, emotionally, and I was coping in ways that were not totally healthy for me. And so this is when you walked closer to me than anybody. Nobody, and I mean like nobody knows the whole story except for you. I mean, even my best friends, I wouldn't tell them like the things that I was going through. And thank goodness, like I didn't blow up my life, and
Right,
everybody's fine. But
right.
it was like the mindset that I had and the decisions that I was making, and it was what was crazy. It was like I didn't even understand myself, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. Why am I thinking this way? Why am I acting this way? And I would
Mm-hmm.
tell you, and I, because I tell you this all the time, like if you hadn't shown me the compassion that you showed me at that time, I feel like I could have been like, I think I murdered someone. And you would have been like,
Mm.
okay, you know what? We're going to give you a hug. We're going to figure it out together. Probably have to go to jail, but we're going to figure like you were just like, like I could have, you And this is where I get this now too. And now I've heard a million crazy, well, I don't want to say crazy, but a million stories from a million different people. And I feel like that same, like, we are all a bunch of humans trying to figure it out. There is literally, not that there are not consequences, but there is no place for shame. There's
Uh,
shame.
Correct.
Yes. And so can you
Once
tell
you
me?
reconcile,
Yeah.
with that, like, and I'm not saying that you don't come to a come to Jesus moment where you're
Sure.
like,
Oh, for
whoa,
sure. Oh my
and
gosh. No.
then and then you just like, and then it's like, okay, you've wrestled with that, and you've made peace with that in your heart. Don't ever let it come back,
Yes.
because God has let it go. I mean, but part of that also, which I feel so strongly about, is that this instance and multiple instances in your life, you have been able to, let's say, confess what was going on in your mind and your heart with,
Yeah.
and then allow me to either tell you, okay, good, now let's move on, or to remind you that you were forgiven. Because I
Yes.
do also believe sometimes in our darkest of moments, when we think we're the worst person in the world,
Yeah.
we can be told that we're forgiven. We can walk with Jesus, but there really is a moment where you need to absolutely hear, if I was God standing over you, I would remind you, you are forgiven.
Yeah.
Now sin no more, and let's go. Like, you can do this.
Right. Totally.
And
Which would, yeah, go ahead.
when you were walking through that desperate time, I would tell you, a time where
Yeah.
you were hurting really bad. And
Yeah.
I knew that you trusted me to share your, not even just your thoughts, but also your actions.
Yeah.
You allowed me to love you in that moment, and you didn't run from me, which was
Mhm.
a super testament to you. And you trusted me enough to love you in that moment. And if I would have corrected you right then and there, you would have ran from me. I
Totally.
would not have had your
Absolutely.
audience anymore.
No,
You would have
yeah.
been gone.
Totally.
I didn't validate where you were. I continued to try to nurture you and bring you
Yes. Right.
a little bit over. But
Yeah, right.
you needed absolutely love at that moment, and you
Yeah.
needed gesture. You just needed a mama to come walk up to you and put you on, and just say, just cry on my shoulder. And
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
be for you.
Well, and you were, and it's affected my parenting too. One of the things that I learned from you was like trusting someone's process, even when their process looks really messy. And like, I know that you would say, you told me later, like maybe a little bit more worried for me than like you let on, but like you weren't like, I mean, and I could tell there were people that were very much like, are you, what's going on with you, or what's the matter with you? And I would just learned how to hide myself better around them.
Hmm.
So with you, I remember like you never acted shocked. You never acted like you were never like, great, do whatever you want ever, because that's stupid. And I knew I didn't even want to be doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And the things I was thinking and the stuff I was wrestling with, I didn't even want to be there. And you knew that, and you really trusted. You trusted my spirit seated in heavenly places. You trusted my true self was there. You kept calling me into it over and over. You weren't shocked and like terrified. You didn't like you weren't you did tell me like, well, and let's just remember, like, if we keep going down this road, this is what's going to happen. But it wasn't like horror and shame and terror and like, all of the things. And I had never been treated like that. And you're absolutely right that if you had like constantly corrected me, especially in the beginning, I would have just learned to hide myself better. And it's
Hmm.
made me, I've seen a lot of people who never had any trust put into who they truly were while they were in a messy season come back around simply because somebody trusted them. But I learned that first from you. Trusted that God was there with them, trusted that they couldn't control them. Like, nobody
Yeah.
could control another person.
No, I think that's the
And
hardest thing.
it's hard.
You want to shake somebody, or you want to walk them, but we're all walking in a different light. And I
Yeah.
got a divorce, and I had a season that I was radically running from the world. And the more people that tried to save me, the more I ran. And so I
Yeah.
probably learned that piece of crazy moment. My dad saw how distraught and crazy I was. It wasn't crazy, but for me it was, right? I have two young
Right.
kids
Yeah,
and
same.
I'm just a mess, whatever. And my
Yeah.
dad took me to lunch one day and he said, "I don't even care what you're going through. I just want you to know that I love you."
Oh
And
my
that was
gosh.
probably the moment in my life where my dad could have been ashamed of me or mad at me and getting a divorce, whatever.
Yeah.
But he showed me this measure of grace that I think that that was my pivotal moment to
Yeah.
turn some things around.
Yeah.
And so I'm super careful in all aspects of my life. Not, I mean, I do have a hard side, and I'm either really good or I'm really bad, right? You have to watch your tongue because your tongue is your gift, but it can also be your curse. So
Yeah.
I'm very cautious with my words. My kids might tell me, "Oh, she's crazy more than she's nice," but that's not true. But if you just let people walk their process, we're all different.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going to want help. If they're asking, then you tell. If they're not, love them until they start asking.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. And you were the first. I always tell clients, like when they're really at the bottom, I don't know any powerful people that don't have a chapter exactly like this.
I know.
That's like, it's
It,
everyone, and it's going to be okay.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I
And I think
think
it's
that
really hard because people look at strong people and they're like, "Oh, they're strong." And I'm like,
totally.
you
And you
didn't
feel
know
more
me
guilty and
before.
more. I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And I cannot ever imagine you like, I've definitely seen you like get really intense, but it's always like in the right direction. I've never seen you be like crazy bad. And that's why you would talk about that time. And I'm like, I can't imagine. But then when people say that about me, I'm like, girl, you don't even know. And And in hindsight, like I look back and I'm like, that wasn't the craziest that it could have been. It wasn't like, I don't want to say it wasn't that bad because I was really hurting and I was not making sound decisions, but everybody, it could have been so much worse.
Yeah,
However, what I went through after that was so much shame. It was like once I sort of like realized what I was doing and like the decisions I was making, the things I was thinking. We ended up moving. Were, healing relationships. Like I mean for years. Like I think I even called you like a couple of years ago and was like,
you
I
did.
just
You did. And I'm like, okay, it's
I
and I'm like, okay, they come up. Those little thoughts come up and they'll hit you every once in a while like
I'm like,
waves,
am
but
I a
let's put it to
horrible
rest.
person?
I
And
think I
I
said
just
yes. No, I'm just kidding.
No, actually what you said was don't judge yourself for acting like the teenager you were never allowed to be.
I'd say that because I believe that so heartedly that you just needed to be a kid for a minute.
Yeah,
You
and
did.
it is
Yeah.
and it's actually something that when I don't feel ashamed about, I like endlessly learn stuff from that season. Like that was really the
Yeah.
beginning of my undoing. And I could have hurt so many people and I'm so glad that I didn't hurt more people than I did. But you were totally right. I unlike you, I didn't have a crazy teenage season. I was like always a good girl. I was always like
Yeah.
doing everything I was supposed to do. And that wasn't for the right reasons. It was like for survival. So when I started to when parts of me started to come out, I did act like a teenager. And then I felt so much embarrassment. I can't even now I'm like, I can't even imagine, Nannette, like what the people in our community at the time thought of me. I just can't, I gotta let it go. I just have to let it
You
go.
but
You got
as
it.
your mom, I'm like, she'll be fine. I don't know what to tell you
I
people. Just give her a
Yep.
moment. Like it's gonna be
Yes,
fine.
that and
Yeah.
that is exactly what you did. You're fine,
Yeah.
Courtney. You're fine. Like, don't, okay, let's not do that again. You're okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I thought this thing and I did this thing. And you were like, okay, probably everybody has. Okay, like, let's move on.
Yeah.
Yep, we made it.
And thoughts don't have to determine our actions. And that is one of the things that we did work through is
Yeah,
you
right.
had a lot of thoughts that just
Yes. I took
created your
literally.
actions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was
It
I think that was a great breakthrough for us because I think
yeah.
eventually, and it was probably on the journey for you to go into this field that you're in because,
Yeah.
yeah, you held on to so many of the thoughts and you made them real.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I absolutely did, and that was before I really understood a lot like OCD and anxiety and how thoughts
Mm-hmm.
work and all of like what the brain is actually doing when it's looping those thoughts and repeating those thoughts.
Yeah.
At the time, I was I was absolutely like underneath everything that I was thinking and feeling. And it feels like lifetimes ago. But it wasn't that long ago. And I think I would love to hear what you have to say to anybody who really feels either a lot of shame or a lot of fear about where they're at in their process. Because I know for me, I'm like, it's crazy to even talk about this season with you right now because I genuinely feel like I am happier than I've ever been in my whole life and feel so like just so grounded and aligned and so much compassion for that version of me. Um so I wonder like that is what I would tell somebody is like, "Oh, you're totally going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're really going to be okay." So if you had somebody that and you do coach and you are like you do meet with people
Yeah.
um and if somebody does need a mom and like a real big sister, mom, aunt vibe in your life, like Nannette is an amazing resource and I'll give you her information. But if that person was sitting in front of you now, just as broken as I was 9 years ago, what would you say?
This whole world convinces us that like what we feel is what we are. And I
Yeah.
would I just, if I'm talking to you, Courtney, at that moment, it would be the same thing. Like whatever we're walking in, it doesn't mean it has to be our reality. And whatever you're thinking
Mhm.
isn't true. And so we've got to
Mhm.
balance off that truth on what the Lord says, what and what reality is. And I
Mhm.
want to make sure, like we've said the word crazy a couple times here, and it's really in jest and laughter, but
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
think that when you're walking through those moments, you think you're crazy, but
Yeah.
you're not. You're just
Yeah.
struggling in in a real way. And anything that you've done,
Yeah.
there's nothing new under the sun. And if you find somebody
Yeah.
that you can trust and you can confess your sins to, there is just this natural, you have to, it's like something's just taken off your shoulders. There's this freedom.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and, and sometimes it's really the what you're holding on to, the lie that you think is so big that nobody would understand, it's that one
Mhm.
piece that's actually keeping you
Mhm.
from growing. And if you can't tell somebody, then write it
True.
down.
It's
Write
so
it
true.
down and write it down as authentically as you can. And if you're afraid somebody's going to find it, throw it away, burn it. I don't
Yeah. Burn it.
but just getting your thoughts out of your head is so
Yes.
so important. It's just,
Yes.
and you're not what you've done. You are who he's called
Yeah.
you to be. And
Yes.
look at the Bible. We're all horrible people. We all make bad choices. We
We
all
all have crazy
sin in
thoughts.
some,
That's what you've always
we
told
all
me.
every one of us has crazy thoughts.
Yeah.
If I told you all of mine, you'd literally probably lock me up. But you can't because I don't tell everybody all my thoughts. But we all have
Yeah.
them. And I think the biggest lie for me is everybody that I mentor, they think that their thoughts are so crazy and they're
Yeah.
the only ones that have them. And I'm like, that is
Yeah.
not true.
Yeah.
It's talk to postpartum moms. They think that what they're going through is
Yeah.
isolated to just them. And I'm like, oh my God, start talking to people because you all are the same. You have the
You're all the
same
same. Yeah.
struggles.
Totally.
But so if you believe that you have so much shame that you can't be set free, that's a lie. And if you
Yeah.
believe that you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
change, that's a lie. And I would just remind them that God forgave us for a reason, and
Mm.
you're no greater than him. So if he's greater than you, then trust what he says and find somebody that you can confess to. If not a person, then at least a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. To start.
yeah, but you
Yeah.
definitely, it's worth the journey to get on the other side.
Mhm. I read this book by, I think her name is Dr. Kelly Brogan, and she is a doctor that helps people get off of psych meds. And this book was very intense. It was actually an essential book for me to read, not a fun read, but it was very essential. And because basically the whole point of the book, Nannette, was that like the reason why people are on psych meds is because they feel like they have these deep, dark, horrible secrets. And she makes a point to say like, you're not bad. You're not dark. You're not terrible. There's nothing that you think about yourself that is as bad as you think that it is. And often those times, like
Mm-hmm.
for me with sexual abuse, that was a secret that I was like, I will never tell anybody this ever, which is a very sad thing for a kid to hold for so long. But it made a lot of sense as
Mm-hmm.
to why I started acting and having these crazy intrusive thoughts. And so as you're saying this, I'm like, it is so essential to say to a safe person the darkest things that you're thinking. And it feels so scary. But honestly, after listening now to so many people's dark, scary stories and their secrets, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I get how you could have been like that to me, where you were like, okay, yeah, me too. Like we all, everybody,
But
you know? You're like,
it,
yep, everybody.
yeah,
And so I
yeah.
think that like just to encourage anyone, like I promise you as I said the dark, scary things that were coming out of my brain, and I got like the trauma support that I needed and the, the safe people around me. Like it's crazy to think like, wow, I can't believe I was so scared of that. Like it's really like not that big of a deal. Like,
I, in all honesty, but that's what our brain does to us. It makes us, it puts us in this place of captivity. And
survival
I'm like,
place. Yeah.
yeah. And you're
Yes.
not meant to be there.
Yes, totally. And peace is so, so possible. And yeah, so where you're headed. Well, if people do want to find you because they're as obsessed with you as I am, where can they look?
NannetteBattles.com. I have a
Nannette,
website.
yes. That is her last name,
Yes.
by the way, Battles. She will battle for you, but that's also her real last name.
I have a story that I want to share with you because I don't know if you really remember how
Okay.
important this was to me. So I do
Okay.
believe that we have a closeness. She is like my daughter.
Oh,
She is a
absolutely.
daughter of mine, and my son is getting married, and it's the day of the wedding. Do you remember this? And I
Yes.
call you, and I'm like, "Hey, do you think you can sing one of these three songs?" And you were just as bold as possible and said, "I do not like those songs, and I'm not going to sing them." I'm like, I'm like,
On the day
okay,
of the
well,
wedding.
I'm like, I'm putting flowers together. I can't think of a song. Like, what am I going to do? And then you said, do you trust me? And I said, I do. And you said, okay, then I will have a song for you at the wedding. And she
Yeah.
had a song for me. But what she did is she wrote a song and
Mhm.
she took all the memories that we had spoke about for years about my kids and she put that in a song for my son, and that was the song that I danced with my first son who got married. And
Yes,
that is
that's
and that
right.
is that's something because we've invested in each other and we loved each other enough.
Mhm.
um, but like I said, our mentorship was not just about making you the priority, it was
Mhm.
us. And I
Mhm.
really feel important that if you're going to have somebody in your life that's going to invest in you, you need to
Mhm.
make sure that they care enough about you and it's just not something that they're having to do, but it's
Mhm.
something that they have a desire to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love you so much. Oh my gosh. Well, this was just one of my most favorite episodes ever, ever. Why doesn't everyone just have a podcast to talk to their favorite people and
I
share
don't
with
know.
the
I think this
world?
is a great idea.
Isn't it? I know. I'll have to have you back for one reason or another. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I'm so happy that you got to hear from one of my people, and I hope that you have such an amazing week. Love you guys. Bye.
Love you. Bye, guys. Bye, Court.